My organization is Rocky Mountain Wildlife Enterprises, and I do wildlife pest control. I manufacture and sell a line of big game and predator calls. I write books on wildlife and wildlife techniques for trapping and handling depredating animals. Yeah, the goal of animal damage control is not to reduce the population, it's to control the damage of the individual animal who's causing the damage, to remove them and or ones associated with them that they might have taught how to do that. From right at this spot, I know of 3 wolves that either been seen or have been road killed in the last 7 years. Now, are they all by themselves? I doubt it. And it's kind of an interesting situation. Were they reported? One of them I know was, but the other 2, they weren't. They were just left to rot. They were road kills, and who wants the hassle? But in my estimation, the advance of wolves into Colorado is much greater already than they care to admit or know about. So the repopulation, as soon as it starts to really wind up and kick out, is going to be rather quick, all by itself.
From your point of view?
Well, I'd say in my point of view, somebody just opened a Pandora's box. And where it goes, nobody knows, except there are going to be some people that take a big hit economically because of their ranches and livestock operations. Be a lot of sorry, sad people because they left their pets out when they shouldn't have been. And on the other hand, there'll be a lot of people that spend a lot of interesting time watching wolves. For me, you tell me what you want to do, I'll tell you how much it costs. I like wolves. I spent my whole career, entire career, cleaning up after agency mistakes, management blunders, just inability to understand the inertia of a wildlife pest population, and then how and the most effective way of dealing with it in a legal and publicly acceptable way.
Can you give us an example of a major bureaucratic blunder of pests in Colorado?
Yes, the black-tailed prairie dog. The attempt to get it listed on the Endangered Species Act. It's hard to read people's intentions. Are they trying to create an issue that then they can go out and appeal for money and collect money then to run their operations? And the black-tailed prairie dog is a pretty little critter that's so nice for the environment and all that. Or do they really feel that they're endangered? Now, I know both kinds. There's not just one kind, there's both types of people and both types of organizations.
So, being as connected with the ranchers as you are, how would you think that the reintroduction of wolves to Colorado would affect your business? Would ranchers see it more as a pest and you would get more business?
Wolves are much more difficult to control than coyotes.
Why?
They have huge ranges, 1,000 square miles. The density depends quite a bit on how long they've been there, how much there is to eat, the weather, the terrain. Can you imagine trying to sort a wolf out of this country right here? They put their foot on a pan about that big or in a loop of wire about like that. Or locate them with an airplane when they're hiding on all this stuff when you're trying to shoot them out of an airplane. The cost for wolves is probably, it's a guess, but I'd say 10, 20 times more.
Wow.
And for a coyote, it's probably around $1,000 each to control specifically a depredating coyote. For wolves, it's probably pushing more like $6,000 or $7,000. They need a very comprehensive look at that and listen to their field people to try to come up with methods that are acceptable and safe to non-target species and can focus on wolves and get them out as quickly as possible so the damage stops. You know what a cow is costing now? A nice big fat old cow that's got a calf? $1,000 each. Now how many can they lose? I know a rancher who called me about 3 weeks ago and said they lost 75 mother cows out of their herd this year up by Casper.
Lost to what?
To wolves, a pack of 11 wolves that moved in there about this time last winter, had a den of pups, and then the pack went out and killed livestock all through the spring and summer before they really discovered it. And since they found out about it and they've really watched it, they've shot 7 of the wolves. They live in a part of Wyoming where I can go up there and shoot one right now. Right, they're delisted and they're considered a predator, so they can be trapped or hunted or whatever, and the landowner can actually shoot one when he catches one. Well, delisting means they've taken them off the endangered species list. Usually they lower them to threatened or a non-essential population, which then allows them to write new rules. And in Wyoming, to get the ability to control wolves from livestock problems, they've set up 3 zones, and I'm sure you'll hear about that. Yellowstone Park's one zone, and then there's another zone where they have intensive management, where they mostly harvest the wolves by sport hunting.
So what do you mean by harvesting the wolves for sport hunting?
Basically, they hunt them and shoot them when they see them, and then they take the pelts and either do taxidermy on them, or sometimes they'll take the furs and use them for garments or sell them. And it's quite interesting, if you really look at the history of hunting for sport hunting for wolves, about the maximum they ever take is about 1/3. And they could probably take up to about 60% and have that then be reproduced for the next year to keep the population level. It also keeps it very healthy. Wolves are interesting. When you get too many of them, they end up with all doggy diseases and all kinds of problems that are really not good for them either. So the principles apply to other kinds of hunting very much apply to wolves.
So when we talk about sport hunting with wolves, do you need like a license to do that, or do you get a certain amount of tags?
It depends on which state. I believe Montana, they have a limit of 5 per year per sport person. I believe in Wyoming it's just 1, and they really treat it as a trophy animal. So they're actually using guides and outfitters and bait stations, different ways of making it humane and selective to get those wolves. Wyoming itself is pretty much in that open predator zone. You can shoot as many as you want any time of year, use pretty much any kind of gun you want to, and you think, oh man, that's really bad. Well, not really, because it's not that easy, believe me. If you're looking at 1,000 square miles per wolf, then the chances of you having an opportunity to shoot a wolf or take him anyway is very small. Now I expect that to grow, and we may get as many as 50 or even 100 wolves per 1,000 miles. And at that point in time, I would guess that the politics will get pretty much on the side of a heavier management strategy on them. So there'll be a lot more use of airplanes and professional people to try to control those wolves. There's 3 zones in Wyoming. One zone you can't shoot any, Yellowstone Park and the surrounding real close area. The second zone, you can basically shoot one as a trophy animal. And the third zone is pretty much open to anybody, no license required, no limit, and the manner of take is anything that's legal. And so they gave up 2 zones, so there's very intense control, so they know they're not going to exterminate wolves. And then in the other zone, because of politics and economics and other things, you've got more of an open season on them, and they're hoping that that will result in a higher harvest of wolves and a slower recovery of the wolves. Yeah, I don't know exactly, but I think it's about 2/3 of the state is in the open zone. Yellowstone Park and then the area just outside Yellowstone Park, yes, there's a higher density of wolves by far. And the other zone is pretty much they're all just spreading into there now and getting established. Well, my own prediction in 20 years they'll be everywhere, and in the northern and western counties, more of the mountainous counties, there'll probably be a density of 1 or 2 per 100 square miles. That'd be my prediction. And where I'm getting that from is kind of tracking the coyotes' invasion of the east. Because they, in the last 40 years, they've gone from not there at all to just everywhere now. And man, they really went, well, wolves aren't going to do that fast, but they are very good reproducers and very strong survivors. So they'll do really well unless people put out the resources to really put the crimps on them and retard that growth. Yellowstone Park, generally it's illegal to call or hunt at all. And I'm not just sure how much of that area around there. I think you've got the elk refuge, you've got the Teton National Park. There's a whole bunch of those very protected wilderness type areas in that. And when the wolves come out of there, they come into the area where there is some hunting allowed. And in that area, yes, calling is one of the methods they use to call them and get them in. And there's some real advantages in that. For example, if you're sitting there and you're a hunter and you're all excited and you call and, okay, here comes a wolf, or 2 or 3 or 5. You have an opportunity to pick out the one you want. And if you see a crippled one or a sick one or something like that, you can pop that one. So you've got a very specific way of choosing which one. If you see the dominant female, you can choose not to shoot her. And you have a lot more management options in terms of which ones you get. I'd say most of them are not, but I'd say maybe half of them do have that kind of ethic. So they would. And their outfitter would. They may choose, say, a black one just because of its color and make a good trophy. They may choose the biggest one, the best colored one, whatever. But there's at least a choice of a selective animal when you're calling and shooting them.
So would you say that the primary motivation for hunting wolves would be for pest control or overpopulation or something else entirely?
No, I would say the primary one would be basically just hunting for the experience and the trophy. That'd be the primary one. The ADC one is all based on whether or not there's verified kills of livestock, and therefore that's where the resources go. At this point, I don't believe there's any active preventive control out there other than what a rancher would do in his own place. So they're not going out just willy-nilly killing wolves just to get rid of them. They're waiting and identifying the kills and then going after the specific animals that they believe did that. So there's 2 different kinds. ADC, a lot of times, is very much misunderstood. They say, well, you get into ADC because you just hate animals. No, not really. Because you're a professional, that's what you've chosen to do.
What is ADC?
Animal damage control. Good question. Wildlife damage control. You're basically after animals that are specifically causing problems to humans.
So how do you feel about federal regulations in terms of ranchers that are just trying to protect their property and their livestock in the cases of wolves that are protected by federal legislation?
Well, I feel rather strongly that it's a really bad PR move on the part of government to cause a person to not be able to shoot a wolf that's eating his cows, especially when you look at the regulations and the effort he has to take to get help. And now he's got to watch this happen a day after day, wolves coming in killing his cows till some agency person shows up and can go after it. And if he shoots the wolf that's killing his dog or his daughter's 4-H sheep, then he gets punished. Boy, that you talk about engendering hard feelings. They have done that. That's been the history of this. And it has led to exceedingly hard feelings with agriculture. Unnecessarily. I mean, I think it was just totally wrong to be that aggressive to a species that's found around the globe, and there's probably several 100,000 of them when they were declared endangered. So it was just unnecessary. Yeah, I don't believe total coexistence is possible. There's just too many variables that you cannot control. And we have a very good history of non-lethal methods that cowboys and wool growers use to keep predators out of their livestock, including guard dogs, which are good and necessary, and there'll be more and more uses when the wolves expand more and more into the ranges. Fencing, lighting, repellent noises, propane cannons that go off periodically, and responses to wolves when they see them before they get the livestock, and then try hazing them or scaring them away. So there's lots of different things that are already being used and will be kicked in when they're necessary. But there's a bottom line, just like somebody decides he wants to murder somebody. The bottom line is you get a detective or the police and you go in and get him, because there's no alternative to that. Yeah, a major motivation for shooting a wolf for a sporting trophy is just the excitement and the challenge of the hunt. And then you have a really beautiful trophy. A wolf is a fantastic trophy in terms of size and hair and texture and colors and highlights. And you know, if you're a hunter, you probably wouldn't understand it. But if you go through all the expense and effort and it's a legal animal to take, it's really nice to take that animal instead of just throwing him away or skin him and sell the skin. You make a stand-up full trophy of him, or you put the you get the skin tanned and use it for a throw or something like that, because it's just something that, you know, like people buy sculptures or paintings or things like that. It's just a nice thing to have.
Is this a trophy?
A wolf pelt's worth between $75 and $500. And that varies in color, texture, quality, where it came from, but that generally is the range. For example, if you get a more or less a summer one where the pelt is hair's being molded off, or you get one that's damaged by sarcoptic mange mites or lice or just some other sort of damage, then it'll be on the $75, $100 range. If it's pretty much perfectly beautiful and ready to go, then it'll maybe be a $500. And then if it's already, the taxidermy is already done and it's really classy, it may be more, $2,500. I think the facts are they are on their way. We're picking them up in Kentucky, Ohio, Iowa, along with cougars and black bears. So we are getting a reinvasion of all the places historically these species have been killed out or trapped out. In the last two.
Happy about that, or
Well, let's put it this way. To me, it offers a whole bunch of new opportunities. I'd say, personally, I'm happy about it. But am I jump up and down happy and say, well, you know, open the floodgates and do it? I say only if you take responsibilities for these things and you manage them, so you, with your little horse, don't come out and find he's dead with a wolf eating on him. Or if that happens, you get reparations for that value of that thing. We got to take responsibility, and that's where it all falls apart. Yeah, some say that photography might replace sport hunting as an activity that would make it exclusive of one or the other. And I think, no, I don't think so. I think both of them go together. In fact, usually they go together. So a sport hunter is photographing wolves, and he may in fact go back to take pictures of wolves as a result of his experience of hunting wolves. So I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think they're very compatible. One thing's always bothered me in this my entire career in wildlife is everybody wants to polarize. Like, this is right or wrong. When you get to wildlife, it's not right or wrong. It's biologically, scientifically sustainable, or it's not. You need to choose a different path. There's just different paths to answer everything. Some are very complex, some are very simple. But when you start getting personal opinions and emotions into it, you end up with this mess we have. And for somebody like me that watches 200,000 acres of prairie dogs die of bubonic plague because we don't manage them and put corridors between the prairie dog towns, it's a real shame. It's a very irresponsible way of dealing with wildlife, to go just crisis after crisis after crisis. We shouldn't have the crises. We've had lots of experience with this. In Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and all the places where we now have wolves. And they're tolerant until they start seeing wolves killing their cows. And then it goes to, it's not necessarily hate for a wolf, it's hate for the people that won't let them kill the wolf that's killing their cows, or not living up to their promises that they're going to pay reparations for those cows that are killed. They see it as a secondary stealing from them. It'd be like saying, okay, I can't lock my door because homeless guys are living around my house are coming in and eating the food out of my refrigerator. Now, how do you feel about that? Well, that's exactly how they feel, man. No way, I don't like this. That's why they're so intensely against wolves coming in, because they know exactly what's going to happen when they get there. What are we going to do in Colorado when we raise about $75 million a year by selling elk licenses? And all of a sudden our elk herd goes from 265,000 down to 85,000. And we're looking at 25 million coming in instead of 75 million. When you look at, just like I said, Pandora's box, when you look at the collateral damage that wolves cause when they're in a given place at high densities, it's hard to imagine.
Could you define?
They love to eat deer, elk, antelope, moose, that the wildlife management system and agencies need to manage all of the wildlife in each state that the wolves are expanding into. And our history is these big game species now, without wolves for 100 years, are now really lacking in capability of avoiding wolves to the point they keep high populations that allow for good hunting and lots of license sales. So it's a real economic issue for wildlife management. I think there's just an intrinsic value of having wolves available to everyone. And that would, to me, that would mean actually more intentional management to lower the conflicts by professional people doing it, and therefore elevate the toleration for wolves.